Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's see what happens.
Exert myself to the level I do at work, but like it's a super demanding job. The last thing I want to do after a long day is have an abrasive conversation or feel like you're not appreciating me.
Yeah, interesting. This is the first time that I've wondered about them as a viable couple. Maybe things will work out, but that word abrasive isn't going to help, I don't think. And we're hearing about things that are happening off camera. And this is a very common, almost stereotypical gender-based fight. Guy comes home from work and wife is like, you never talk to me. Certainly this doesn't follow gender lines. There's a lot of different configurations of this dynamic. It might be worded differently. We certainly might see it differently because of stereotype and gender norms and stuff. But I don't know. I guess I'm just saying that it's a common one. And there's a lot of different possibilities. One is that I'm going to take a guess and say that when he comes home, and she comes home, she works hard too, that they both want to get their needs met when they get home, which has to do with both intimacy between the two of them, love and affection and care and attention, but also to relax and decompress and not have to deal with anything abrasive or conflictual or hard, difficult. And when they both come home, he maybe in the beginning of this time together, she would notice, oh, he's a little quiet, and she would let him do that maybe, but then over time would be like, hey, what's going on? And he would, and these this is little things this is why it's so important to be in couple therapy right away, because when these things spin out of control, it can go down a certain road, So in the beginning, it's just like, she's like, hey, let's blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, oh, I just need to, can we just, chill and watch TV for a second? And she's like, oh, okay. And that's fine. Next day, he maybe has a particularly difficult day or something like that. And without telling her, is really hoping that she will just let him be quiet, or at the very least won't bring up anything that is difficult and could potentially conflictual, right? He just wants to relax. He wants to be with her completely, but he just wants it to be nice and happy and everything's fine, to recharge his battery or something. She comes home and she's like, been thinking all day. It's like, is he going to be distant like that? Even though that wasn't likely going to happen, but there's a question mark. And the way she deals with it is to say, hey, we need to talk about last night, which is fine. And it's not abrasive to do that. But he is like, oh, not this again. Okay. It's interpretation. And then he is thinking, oh, it's abrasive. He accommodates maybe that first time, but he's thinking, I don't want to do this every time. Why did I have to be the one to accommodate? Why can't she just let me sit here? Then you rinse and repeat this over 3 weeks. And then you get here where it's just like, she's like, you always shut down. And he's thinking, you're always abrasive, right?
I hear you.
I don't think you do hear me, though. That's the problem. Like, I tell you I'm tired and you don't listen.
I don't know the context. I don't know the conversations they've had up until this point. But she said, I hear you, which I would have hoped he could have said, thank you. Even if in his head he's thinking, I don't know if she does. She said that, and I think she believes it. Now, maybe the cameras are helping her to stay on track. I don't know. But this is such an interesting turn because we weren't there during all the fights getting to this point. So it's really out of left field, for me anyway. And she says, I hear you. And he says, I don't think you do, which isn't great for him to say. I don't know if this is kind of his way or if it truly has been happening a lot and they've had some huge fights and she has never said that or indicated that. And he's just like, well, you say that now, but I don't know if I trust that because you have refused to hear me this whole time. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. I say this every now and then that it's hard to watch good couples struggle and break up over things that are so easy to fix with couple. I mean, this is so easy. I'm telling you, the kinds of things that I help people with are so much harder. Imagine 15 years later what this fight can look like without any outside help. That's what I end up dealing with. Not that this is so easy to deal with. It's so easy. It's not like easy and simple, but it's doable pretty quickly. And if they had intervention now, they would be given a chance anyway to not derive a narrative about the other person, because you take this down a road and she will say, he doesn't care about my feelings. He's cold, or he's not ready for marriage, or he doesn't really have love in his heart. He doesn't love me. He could walk away going, she's critical and controlling and invasive and abrasive and mean or hurtful or neurotic, or certain ways that of contempt and they would both be right and they would both be wrong. And if we can head it off at the pass early on, if they can have an understanding and a way to talk about it and a system of everyone get their needs met most of the time, which is totally possible in this. Often people think of it as like a win-lose situation. It doesn't have to be that, where it's like he needs, in order for him to get his needs met, she has to just be like completely silent and just like let him be when he gets home. For her to win, he needs to totally be accommodating and have all these long conversations. No, like often it's just like it could be solved sometimes, and because I've worked on this specifically, it can be solved sometimes. I never know what's going to solve it because it's so nuanced, but when we have the foundational conversations and we investigate it and there's understanding, sometimes what the couple will land on eventually is realizing, what we both need can be accommodated if when I get home and there's 5 minutes of like concentrated eye contact and check-in, and he's like, and I'm totally fine with that. 5 minutes, I actually like that. But after that 5 minutes, I just need time to just be dead to the world because I've been holding on for dear life my entire day, not only as a worker of this very stressful job, but also as a parent, I had the school meeting and, whatever. And I just need like a half an hour to just be like, everything's fine. And sometimes that even means that we will cuddle, but say nothing and watch Stranger Things on TV. And then she's like, that totally gets my needs met because we have a check-in for 5 minutes and then we cuddle and we watch TV and I feel secure about things. And I know eventually he'll probably have the capacity to have more conversation later on in the day or even go out, have a date night or whatever. And everyone gets to win. So I just want to say that because a lot of times it's assumed that one person has to lose in order for the other person to win, which is almost never the case.
I just feel like I'm getting shit on for being tired, and I don't think that's fair. I don't know. I'm gonna be tired for forever. I don't fucking know.
There's another possibility that he's depressed. It didn't look that way earlier, but it could be a vacillation. I'm not diagnosing from afar, but if you've ever had a partner that was depressed or you are a depressed partner, conversations can look like this sometimes. There's not a lot of indication of that, but I'll just throw it out there. I will say that he looks particularly stressed out, and maybe she'll detect that. Maybe we'll say, "Oh, wow, this isn't just him wanting to be quiet. Like he's struggling, and I have need for check-in." But maybe this is exactly the kind of check-in that she needs. Maybe she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted." If you could literally just say that, you could come home and say like, I am in a really rough place and I'm really stressed out. And, just hearing that from you instead of just like blank, maybe, I don't know, I'm just hoping.
I need you to be like my backbone, not just something else that makes me more tired.
I think there's a possibility absolutely that he overinterprets that he is interpreting her attempts at connecting as being burdensome or something. Now, again, if you're depressed and you don't really know it, it can feel that way because you instantly start to feel pressured or ashamed of yourself or unable or whatever. But it's also possible that aside from that, he is too quick to interpret her bids for contact as abrasive and unfair. I don't know. I tend to think that probably is true because she's not, up till this point, even in this conversation, I wouldn't say she's abrasive at all. We've seen abrasive on Love is Blind, through the 9 seasons. There's been abrasiveness. She is assertive, but it's not abrasive. It's not. Of the ways people make requests like this that aren't necessarily completely healthy in the way that I would, in a corny way, word things, she's closer to the end of the spectrum that's healthy. So I don't know what to say.
No, I get that, and I apologize that I'm getting on you about this, but like we're about to say I do, and like that's how you are, and you are always tired. That's fine. Like I'm not telling you there's anything wrong with it. I'm not sure that's what I thought this was gonna be like. And
okay, yeah, and maybe this is a deal breaker. She's saying I apologize. And she's like, okay, if you're tired, that's fine. Meaning, if you're tired, okay. But I would like to know that it's tiredness and not rejection of me, or you're choosing not to. If you're tired, you're tired. And I apologize. So she's, I think, saying that. But then she's also saying, which is understandable, that if this is how it's going to be, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't blame you for being tired all the time. I get it. But and then, of course, there's a whole other conversation that we could talk about regarding him maybe working too much because he's trying to catch up to her economically or something. I don't know. I have a feeling he's always cared about this job or something. But, there could be something like that of just resentment on his part of just like, okay, well, I don't want to be a mooch. You really want to buy this $2 billion house. I can't afford even the beginning of that mortgage. So you're going to pay for it, and I'm going to resent it, and I'm going to feel like I'm mooching, and I'm going to feel bad, and I'm going to feel like I'm not a real man. So I'm going to dedicate myself to work from here, this point forward, because I need to move ahead. And then I'm being yelled at because I'm actually I'm trying to meet you where you're at and trying to accommodate you by earning more, even though she hasn't said, you know what I mean? You could imagine someone like that getting into their head too much about that and screwing things up. I don't know. I think that's a simplistic way of seeing the situation. It could be a factor, but it also might not be related at all. He might have always been dedicated to this job.
trying to have conversations with you, and maybe
Maybe what I need is just a little bit of recharge time.
okay, when there's nothing to distract us, no TV, no whatever, are we just gonna sit and stare at each other?
Sometimes yes, and I think you need to compromise with me.
The way that she's wording it, he could have taken it a lot of different ways. And I think in a healthy way, he's just like, yeah, actually, because it's sort of a ridiculous thing, right? We're just going to stare at each other. But he's not saying it literally like we're just going to stare at each other, but he's like, yeah, basically, that we don't necessarily talk about much, but that we're together. And that's another little tip in a conflict is that when you get that kind of thing, which has some opportunity there from her, when she says that, it could be seen as combative, but there's an opportunity there. And she's trying, so I will say that this whole conflict is indicative of the way that they have conflicted in the past, which is pretty high level of differentiation because they're not engaging in very much defensiveness and criticism of each other. They're trying to say, this is what I need without being, just think about some of the other fights we've seen this season even, of calling people names or raising your voice, not letting the other person talk, insulting, criticizing, calling people immature or whatever. We've heard a little bit of that abrasive word it doesn't seem to be triggering her. So maybe she's like, yeah, either she would say, yeah, I guess it is a little abrasive, or she would say, well, I don't think he means like it in a horrific way when he says abrasive. I think that's just the way he's describing it when he's really stressed out. So there's different ways and they've both exhibited a fair amount of flexibility up until this point and during this conversation. So, but if I was to change something, I would change that. I would also say to him, pour it on right now and say, I am so sorry. If I had it my way, I would come home and we would connect. Absolutely. There are some times when I'm so tired, and I guess I'm not very good at communicating to you like what I need. I definitely want to connect at night, but I need just quiet, or I need to just have things go well. I deal with a lot of stress, and when I come home, I don't want any criticism. I don't want any obligation. I want us to be together, and for us to and for you to just be okay with that and not to be worried about connection or anything, because we're together for the rest of our lives. And I promise you that I love you, and that if you just give me a little bit of space, I'll come around. You know what I mean? You don't have to chase me. So that's the other thing, is like preoccupied, avoiding attachments is another thing, introversion, extroversion, or just general stimulation level or something. But I don't know. They're on of the conflict, this is going well, but I wonder if this is a philosophical deal breaker thing. Enough, sort of like when you're on a jury in a criminal trial, you need beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Well, when you're getting married, same, right? You should be beyond a reasonable doubt that you're definitely wanting to marry this person, and it's going to work. And even if there's 10% of uncertainty, then you should say no at the altar, which I think a lot of people would agree with. Is this 10%? Is it enough for her and for him to think, if I had money to put down, I would say we're going to work out, but there's enough reasonable doubt and there's so much at stake. I have a kid. Maybe we should just say I don't, or not even go to the altar and try dating without that. Unfortunately, when that happens, the couples almost always, if not always, break up, even though I think if they did honestly try to give it a try and didn't think of it as a downturn in their relationship, that things could work out, you know what I mean? Or, as I sometimes wonder, is that the concentration of the show amplifies that little bit of time to such an extent that you know that this, if you're not yes at the altar, you just know like it'll never be yes at the altar, because that reason why you are not saying I do at the altar it is always going to be a barrier.
I'm talking to people 10 hours a day at work.
But like, I'm not talking to that many people.
Do you want a job?
Yeah. So this is great that they've done this from the beginning. If you can joke around during it, it's not always appropriate. It's not always helpful. It's not always not hurtful. Sometimes it's hurtful to joke around, obviously. Sometimes it's avoiding things, but there's a lot of different techniques to having conflict generally go better. One is to be able to make a little bit of joke here and there and to respond to it. And another is physical contact. So, and a lot of eye contact, which they both have. And they're not doing the things that you will tend to see from couples that will escalate out of control, of increased fight or flight. We're not seeing that. Stonewalling, even like in minor ways of like turning away or not looking at the person. Certainly they're not criticizing each other. They're not making any drastic kinds of statements. This is looking a little bit more dire than previous conflicts, but there's a lot of strengths here.
No, but like when you get home, I want to have conversation. I want to hear how your day was. I want to hear, oh, Joe Schmo was a dickhead today, like whatever.
So I'll stop yammering too much. But if I were there, I would drill down on that more, because in all likelihood, it's not that she wants to hear about Joe Schmo being a dickhead. It's that she wants some intimate closeness. She wants to get her needs met, maybe even of socializing. She was saying earlier that at her work, she doesn't talk to many people, and that can be a thing, right? So maybe for her, it's not that she needs to hear about what's happening at work, because maybe he just wants to put that behind him or whatever. But, it's important. So there's some need that in all likelihood she wants met, which is fine. And we need to define that need very precisely in terms of what could meet that need. Often our first go-to way of meeting that need, we can become too rigidly attached to that one way, and there are possibly other ways. Like cuddling. There's a possibility, I don't know, maybe not, but there's a possibility that both people can get their needs met. He can be quiet, she can get her need met for intimacy and closeness and love without talking at all. Now, eventually, maybe, but that it's cuddling and watching Netflix, or 5 minutes of just laying in bed together, 69, spooning, or 69ing, that would probably do it too, right? I don't know, I guess 6-6ing, anyway, 9-9ing.
Joining me on some of that sometimes.
How do you think life's going to be like when you have kids? It's not just go, go, go anymore, Like, you really have to slow down quite a bit. I know you have, means for, a nanny and stuff, but, I don't really want a nanny.
Okay, so it sounds like they've talked about that too. And she's wise to think about, is this really going to work given our needs and our lifestyle? She's talking about wanting to go, go, go and do things spontaneously. And he's saying it's different for parents. Now, it's not always different. There's wiggle room there. Often we assume that as parents you have to be. Now, depending on your kid and your situation, the age of the kid, and your accessibility to family members that you trust with your kid, that kind of thing. There's a wide variety of what's possible, but at the very least, what he's saying is pretty common among parents of just look, my priority is my kid, and if my friends invite me to Aspen and that means that I have to get a nanny, I don't want a nanny. Not because I hate nannies, but my priority is my kid, and I don't care enough to go to Aspen with my friends to sacrifice my time with my son, that sort of thing. And they're having that conversation. And it's great that they are, because it's very real. It's very important. And it sounds like they've had that conversation with that. He's like, I know that you can afford it, because she's probably said before, we can get a nanny or something like that. And so he's getting out ahead of that. It's but I don't want a nanny. That's not the sort of life I want to live. Now, I will say it's totally possible for the two of them to get married. I don't know. I guess I'm still pulling for them. And for her to have some of that, to be able to go to Aspen with her friends. And if he's okay with that, at least in the short term, which I'm guessing he might be, who knows, they should have a conversation about that. Then, everyone can get their needs met. And, over time, they both can just kind of see how that works out. That's not a traditional marriage, right? But who cares about tradition when it comes to this kind of thing?
Literally be a chore. I just want you to think about that kind of stuff. Because, life completely changes when you have kids.
Yeah.
Are you okay with it being that different?
What else you got in here?
Okay. I don't know where they're at. Maybe for him, if he were, and they edited that, but if he really doesn't want to lose her, if he could communicate that and say, I do not want to lose you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And you need to realize what the reality is, at least the way I want things to look like as a father, and also some of the practicalities of it. And I really want you to make sure that you understand that before you agree to this, but I really hope you say yes to that, because it could be received from her of just like, look, take it or leave it, meaning he doesn't really care. Or he could be thinking, I really do care, but I don't want to pressure her, because if I pressure her and she says yes and then she resents me later, that'll be bad. So, it's just a lot to think about.
I don't know.
Where do you want this stuff?
In here.
In the trash? Okay.
So we're seeing more differentiation, more ability to regulate, more perspective, not attacking the other person, not spinning out of control. I mean, just think about the other couples we've seen this season where they even have the very minor conflict, like you said a weird thing when you woke up drunk in the middle of the night, like things spin out of control and there's tears and like, oh my God, I can't believe you're treating me this way, and rings being thrown. And so just think about that and think about this, that could have easily gone like that with these two. It might seem like, well, why would it? Because, they're not really fighting about anything big. Neither were the others. It's just how you decide to say the sort of words you say, the things you emphasize, all the different tributaries that you can take. Should I make a joke here? Should I reach out? Should I let it go? Should I say how I feel? Should I use that word that's a little more pointed? What do I say? How do I feel? How do I reassure myself? How do I believe in love or the other person? There's a lot of different things happening. A lot of it has to do with our past anyway, and the amount of therapy we've been through. But after all of that, pretty important conversation and a little bit of tension, they have come back around, and there's goodwill, there's love, there's working together and accommodation. He's now talking more than he was at the beginning. So whether he knows it or not, whether it's conscious or not, he's interacting more, right? And she is not saying you're distant, you know what I mean? She's letting him have the distance that he needs right now or something, you know what I mean? So they're both, after having that conversation, which went really well, is a very good model for how, there's always going to be some difficulty. I wonder about that abrasive word and that kind of stuff. But, I want to point out that was a very healthy conversation. Now, they might decide ultimately not to be together. They might have literally just decided that right now. But that's not something that you have to yell at each other about.
I golf. I like to go to nice restaurants often.
I like fancy restaurants too.
It would be so fun for me to see you court me in a sense. That's very important to me, to have a man who goes through the effort and the steps to plan a nice date, to hey, I saw this card, made me think.
Yeah, I'm wondering if she is remembering what it's like to date people that she's referred to who were either very young and didn't have kids or were a lot older. She described a particular past partner of hers that was a lot older, she said. I don't know what that means, but a lot older and extremely wealthy. She was saying basically a billionaire, So this person, and she would say that he would buy her things and would take her to these really expensive things, but it was largely empty or unfulfilling. But there is an element there of effort and time spent and priority and that sort of thing. And she is wanting that. And so she's good to say that, right? I think she might be kind of blending the two, but she, I think, is trying to reduce it, that thing that she misses, to something that is healthy and actually of her needs, which is, I want effort, I want contact, I want, she's saying court me and date me, and hopefully he'll hear through that and understand what she's getting at, which is that he cares, that he loves her. Now, it's possible that what she's used to are partners that were either so wealthy that they could pay for nannies and private jets and stuff, or they were so young that they didn't have those kind of responsibilities. And maybe that is a deal breaker thing. But I imagine that there is a win-win there, that he would be like, oh, and maybe it'd be good for it. And if I were there, I'd be like, okay, well, what would that look like? I might ask her. given what you're talking about, which is great, how do you think that would look like? Let's say 5 years from now, you're married, you're still together, and things are working well, and you're getting that need met. How would that look with a 10-year-old kid, Luca, and your husband is very involved as a father, and you're, to some range involved as a stepmother, depending on how things work out, because there's a lot of decision making there in terms of and sort of teasing out trial and error for the two of you, because there's a lot of things. There's intentions, and then there's the reality of it. Anyway, what would that look like exactly? Now, if she said, well, I want him to spontaneously fly the two of us to Italy and pay for everything and get like a private yacht, which I don't think is what she would say. But it could help for her to articulate it, right? She could say, well, I guess it would be that on the weekend when he doesn't have Luca, that he plans in advance and shows me that he still loves me and values our time together. And I don't know, maybe a nice restaurant or something, but it doesn't have to be super fancy. And that we maybe do a thing like a play or something, and then we come home and we're together. I don't want to get lost in the shuffle with him and his very stressful job and being a father. I don't want to get lost in the shuffle. And then he could say, oh, I totally want that too. That I can do. To kind of make it a little bit more concrete. Or he could say, I can't do that, which I don't think would happen.
He has Luca. He goes to the gym.
You didn't fall in love with me because of my hobbies. I could do any of your hobbies and have fun. I just don't have time. I don't want you to feel like you have to take a step down a social class or whatever to marry me or whatever. But you said it yourself in the pods. You didn't want this to be about money.
Yeah, they're editing it, but it's a good conversation. And I don't think that she hasn't mentioned, well, I mean, it's arguable maybe she is mentioning money, but I don't think that's what she wants or needs. And I don't think that's what she was trying to emphasize. I think what she was trying to emphasize is I want a life. I want a marriage. I want us to, at least for a time, maybe forever, to have the romance and the time together that is not being invaded by anything, whether it's your work or, Luca, love him, but I want us to have a romance. And I think he does too. So if they can kind of keep it to that, then I think there's a way forward. But if they get talking about money and stuff, and if they go down that road, then I think there's some things they can't really work around, right? I mean, she's saying, I want to go to nice restaurants, which means very expensive. And he could be receiving that as well, wait, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford that. And remember in the pods, you said, you knew my situation. So what's going on here? So I hope they don't get on to that topic.
All those other guys that were crazy rich business guys who you probably did all those things with never worked out. That's why you picked me.
Okay, suspense, smile. The next episode is the weddings. Let's watch, find out what happens. Actually, let's call it an evening. It's late, and I was I really want to watch the wedding episode, but it's late. And I thought, well, sometimes the wedding episode, there's not a lot for me to say other than whoa, they got married or they said no or something. And I could watch the episode and only occasionally react to things, in terms of things that I think are important for me to react to on the channel. But instead, took a second, asked my wife, who has seen the wedding episode, and I said, how much yammering do you think I have to do during the wedding, as opposed to just me watching the episode and going whoa, they got married? And she said, actually, on average, for you, the wedding episode has a lot in there to analyze. So more yammering means I'll be up till 1 a.m. watching this episode, which isn't good for my sleep and my health. And also if my brain starts to go as I'm watching, it makes for bad content. So let's call it an evening. And now for you, the wedding episode of me reacting to it will be the next episode that gets published on my channel. So for you, there's no difference, but to me there is. Somehow that feels important. Anyway, take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.